we are live. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. We're so excited to be here today. Welcome to the Digital Fashion Innovator Series here on LinkedIn Live. My name is Marie Bastian. I'm the CEO and founder of World of Mesh. And I'm your host for today's session. And this new era of digital fashion is just bringing together so many amazing talents from all around the globe, and we're here to share their stories. And today we have our next digital creator with us. It's going to be a really exciting session all about AI. And we're just here to celebrate her story, to hear how she got to where she is right now, one of the leading voices in the Web3 space and digital fashion space. And just to note, all our guests are speaking on behalf of themselves. If you have any questions, add them in the comments. This time, I'm going to keep a close eye on the feed because I'm also learning by doing. I just told Stella before, she's so good with the community work, reacting to comments, and that's going to be my challenge for today. So with that, I'd like to welcome Stella Achenbach. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, Marie, and hi, everyone, and thank you for having me on. It's really exciting to be here.
Super nice. I was just saying, Stella has been in this business leading the Web3 community through digital topics, including me. I came across Stella a while ago over Paola, actually was on our other session. That's how we actually got to getting her on as well. Maybe you could give a quick introduction of yourselves and tell a little bit, who you are and how you got into digital fashion.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do so. So I studied fashion quite a while back at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. So I come from a very traditional fashion background, worked then in haute couture for a bit, tiny bit, until I found out it's not paying so well. And I was like, okay, this is not, how I come to actually make an income anytime soon. And I was mainly supporting myself during the studies. Actually, a fun side story. I found on the Vanilla issue on Instagram. I don't know if you know this channel, but there was this girl essentially the other day talking about how it really is to study fashion, and then it's hard. You barely sleep, you barely eat. You have to often decide, do I buy fabric or do I buy food, right?
Yeah, that's true. The struggle is real.
And I had to laugh so hard as very much a senior to this young woman who, probably is just 1 or 2 years into her studies. And I was like, yeah, damn, I couldn't agree more. And then, the topic of how much money do you even need to invest, because people kept telling me at the time, oh, you're so lucky, you don't have to pay student fees or study fees like a lot of people in the US have to do, and many other countries.
It is a whole nother story. True.
And I was lucky to not have to pay that on top. But does this mean that you don't have to invest a lot of money? No, sadly it doesn't. So I asked this question on a poll and said, like, hey, what do you guys think? How much money did I actually spend during all of my studies in fashion? And it came about to, so I can reveal it now because that was like 1.5 days ago. And it was around a little bit more than $50,000 that I spent during the 6 years, 5 active years of study, 1 break year to actually earn money for the graduate collection, which usually is the most expensive one, right? And I even got sponsored by Swarovski, so and Triumph, like undergarments, right?
Yeah.
So I had even sponsors, and it's still a very costly endeavor. And so, after I finished studying, obviously I wanted to get to work as fast as I could. That didn't happen so fast, sadly. And after dabbling a little bit in couture, I really enjoyed the work. Right? I really did, because you can do so many handcrafted things in couture, and really, putting your hands to work. It really,
It's a different world. It's much more artistic, right?
Yeah, it's just so creative, right? You can come up with, and usually they want you to come up, it's almost like game design. They never want you to come up with one concept, right? Also in haute couture fashion, I always tell you, like, this is roughly what we want, but then could you please come up with 10 to 15 different ideas?
Yeah.
And, I was all over this. I loved it, okay? This is like quite the challenge that makes me excited. And so, yeah, I did this. Then, eventually I just, became a complete freelancer. And I started working for some different agencies and had some different clients. And it was going okay. But I feel a lot of people can relate to me when I say, like, man, it's a constant struggle, right? It's a constant struggle. You have to be very flexible to adjust to each client, right? And you're usually communicating with a lot of them, like, at once. It's never like, there's one person at a time. So there needs to be a lot of flexibility in how you set up your work. And while I really liked it, I had this one moment in a factory in China where I saw a pile of neon pink jeans, and it just hit me, right? It was a really well organized factory, so it was no complaint from my side about the factory. It was just this, like, image of a pile of neon pink jeans. I don't know, maybe it were only 1,000, right? But it felt to me like 20,000 neon pink jeans, and I was like, damn, what am I doing here? Like, who am I doing this for? This just feels wrong in every degree. And I remember I came back home and I talked to my husband. I was like, I don't think I can keep doing this. Like, it feels this has no purpose whatsoever, and it stopped making me happy a long time ago. And so, this was right at the edge of when we actually moved to Peru. So I was raised and born in Germany. I studied in Vienna. I worked in, New York and other different cities. But eventually, we were living again in Germany when I had these freelance gigs. And then because of the job my husband took on, we were essentially asked to move to Peru. And when I arrived here, anyway, I had to learn a new language and all of that stuff. So that wasn't easy.
Out of the comfort zone, huh?
Yeah, and which was great, right? It was a really good thing. It taught me a lot, also about culture and communication. There's, like, so many layers of learning to living in a different country. It's really great. But I think the one thing that really changed was, like, I looked inside of myself, right? And I was like, okay, I realized I really cannot keep doing this work. So I need to come up with another plan. And then a friend of mine came to visit, and we actually went to the Amazon rainforest for, like, 3 days. So there is no internet access in this eco lodge. There's, like, nothing, right? Just nature, humidity, sweat.
Time to reflect, time to rethink life.
Yeah, it was really healthy. And so she said, like, don't take this the wrong way, but I never you're a nerdy person. I never saw you to be like a fashion designer. When I learned you're a fashion designer, I was like, wait, what?
How does that fit together?
Yeah, like, she could not, she could not connect the dots. And she was like, did you really always want to study fashion? Was this, like, really the origin of all of this? And so, during this time in the jungle, I was like, I don't think that was the start. And I reminded myself of, what was the stuff that I was doing when I was, like, 16, 17, 18, right? And I was gaming. I was one of these weird girls, which maybe there was, like,
First
a 1 or 2
generation.
percentage at the time,
Yeah.
Like, lumping together my computer with other people's computer in a garage, building a LAN network and playing games, right? Half-Life, Counter-Strike, on top of that list, CSGO.
Eating cheap pizza from the supermarket you throw in mom's oven.
Exactly, that's right. And I don't need to mention that the smell in these spaces was horrible. So I was like,
absolutely, I remember those
right,
times.
how did I come up with fashion, right? Suddenly it was like this light bulb that went on. It's like, how did I come up with fashion? That makes absolutely no sense. And then I thought back and was like, yeah, I came up with fashion because there was no way at the time to study game design. I was like, yeah, but we're now 20 years later. Maybe there is a way, right? So obviously there is a way. So I looked into that and I realized very soon that all of these curriculum, they, the base, the foundations of design teachings, they never change. No matter if it's graphic, fashion, game, right? The tools is what usually changes. And so what I did is I started learning Blender. Like, right, I went
Blender was your door into the world of digital fashion. Well, I mean, it's the open source one. I mean, it's pretty
because
straightforward.
I didn't want to go into digital fashion. That's the truth. That was not on my mind. It's like, I'm gonna learn how to design games because that's gonna be fun. And I looked at the statistics and I was like, man, like the gaming industry had seen a growth spurt in the most, I want to say, in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Is incredible. If you look at so many other industries and they're in decline, like gaming is like a hot shot, right? I don't want to
And
say
it's
to the moon, but
it's not done yet. It's not
no,
finished.
exactly, it's not there yet. And so, yeah, I set out to actually learn game asset design, right? And so the first thing you need to understand is there are so many ways on how to position yourself. So ideally, you're a generalist with a niche, right? That's what I learned attending some, game conferences and stuff like this. And I was like, oh,
All you
okay.
freelancers out there, listen.
Exactly. Like if you want to switch, this is the way, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so Blender seemed like the most omni adoptable tool for learning all of this. But, you know, Blender Blender totally freaked me out in the beginning. I was like, hell, what can this tool not do? This is
It's
scary.
an endless universe. It's like Photoshop when you start learning it. You could learn 30
No,
years and still didn't learn everything.
I mean, I agree. Photoshop has also its own little mystery boxes, right? I
Yeah,
agree. But
yeah.
still, it's like very much like a straight line, right?
Mm.
While Blender, did you know you can do video editing in Blender?
No,
A
I
lot
didn't know that.
You can do post production, you can do video production. There's like nothing. I want to say there is nothing that Tom Rosendahl didn't think about, right? When it comes to developing Blender over the past 20 something years.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this is how it started. And then, I learned about Substance Designer and my niche became texturing design. And when I entered texturing design, my attention kind of, went full circle back to fashion. I was like, I saw all of these things, from the Fabricant and from,
Mhm.
also DressX at the time. And I was like, why do the textures not look like good, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm not saying that, I think the normal viewer eye would be just like, wow, this looks so cool, right? But like
Mhm.
me as being always obsessed, even with physical fashion, with like beautiful textures and embroidery and all of these details, I was like, why do the textures not look good? And then I went into Substance Designer and I was like, yeah, let's make beautiful textures. Let's make beautiful digital textures. And this is how I found my niche. And then I, slowly but safely, I came back full circle, learning Marvelous Designer and, utilizing all of these different tools to also do digital fashion. But my main aim, yeah, the Blender creator deserves a Nobel Prize. Yeah, I
That's
give
right.
it to Tom Rosenthal. It's just like,
Hi,
he's the
Daniela.
yeah, and he's like Gandalf, in the Blender community. Like, yeah. And also I went last year for the first time to the Blender conference. And, you know, I think the Blender community, or what Rosendahl figured out way, way before Web3 even emerged, is what you also said, is community, right?
Mhm.
Blender is a community. Blender is not a company, right? And this is the whole vibe of the conference as well. It
Mm.
feels like a family get together. Even the lunch area, it's like built like a huge German food market or
Yeah.
another like food market, and people just from all over the world sit together and have lunch together and talk about like Blender stuff. So it's crazy. It's crazy cool.
It is. And I have a feeling that we're going to be talking also more about community, personal connection, and also open source topics in the course of this
Yeah.
conversation. But yeah, I didn't want to interrupt your introduction.
No, it's a long introduction, I feel, but I went a little bit off script. I hope that's
No,
okay.
these are the details that everyone loves to listen to because we can relate. I can relate to so much that you just said. Like when you saw that pile of jeans, I had that moment when I opened the door to the sample room with all the samples that my former colleagues were creating as designers. And I was like, what? There's nothing happening with these. They're just sitting here.
Yeah.
So yeah. Continue.
Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah, I think many of us have had this experience. Some act on them, right? Others don't. I think there is no saying what's the correct way, right? I think it's most important you feel okay about what you do. I think this matters more than people think. Yeah. Anyhow, so what then happened is I was actually getting ready to apply to some gaming studios and put together my portfolio. I was so proud of it, showing like all the different aspects of work I had done.
And all those assets you have in you.
Yeah, and
Combination.
then a very energetic girl called Emma reached out to me and she was like, "Hey, do you want to participate in this competition?" And I was like, "Oh man, this is like 50-50. Either it's totally a scam or it's something else that is actually good." And turned out it was at the time was something really good, right? Because she was the person who introduced me, and I think also many others who are here today, into the world of Web3, right? And showed us that especially creators can benefit of all of these different emerging technologies over there. And what I think she didn't expect, and neither did I, is that eventually I developed such a huge interest for all of this that I founded the ALANA project, obviously, but also was like, I need to understand like the foundational layer of this. So I've been studying programming. I've been studying with the Token Engineering Academy to become a token engineer, or complex system designer, as we actually call it, to develop incentive mechanisms for people. And along those two fields, so the creator and the developer field, obviously AI is something that you cannot overlook, right? It's a very present thing, and it's also something that is in dire need of setting really good standards so these tools don't end up hurting us. And so I think this is where I made the full circle curve back to what we really want to talk about.
Absolutely, because today's topic is an AI fashion guide, the future of design. I remember I saw an introduction from you on your Instagram post where you were introducing yourself, and you were saying that you would love to see yourself as someone who guides someone. If there's any questions coming up that they can turn to you, that's why I thought it was the perfect title for this. Because today we're going to talk about AI, but we also want to dive into the ethical and moral point of side of the design, and how we as creators and brands can engage with this technology and use it for the good, and to understand what's happening behind the scenes, where the state is right now. So yeah, if it's fine with you, I jump right in. We can get right started with the topic.
Yes, let's go.
So maybe we can start out with what you think are the biggest opportunities and the biggest challenges while adding AI to our fashion design and fashion landscape. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think first it's important to say like there's a creative side of this, right? And then there is how brands can incorporate AI into also other parts of the company structure. There's like many ways on how to do that. I think what is important is to, yeah. Anyhow, you said like the positive, right, and the challenges. So I think you can do there's almost nothing you cannot do with AI, right? The only question is like, how good is the outcome really? So right now we have some open source models that you can download on Hugging Face, for example, and you can start training them according to your own preferences. But there are two things to consider when training any kind of AI, be it an AI generative image AI, or be it a ChatGPT or a chatbot for your customers, right? Both of them require data, and data is always old, right? You cannot produce new data. It happens to be produced as you move along into the future, but you cannot produce it from the future and take it to the past, right? So data is always old. It's always in the past. So it comes with a lot of different biases, right? So in the past, we had many more male CEOs in the fashion world than we have female CEOs. This is a phrase you can put onto any industry, doesn't matter. Healthcare, medical care, right? Human resources, the same problem. So literally AI gets weighted data, right? It doesn't get biased data directly. Biased data happens, with the rules that the developer puts in, right?
Yeah.
But it has weighted data. So you have much more information on male CEOs than you have on female CEOs. So automatically, because the AI doesn't necessarily, be like, oh, I have only that much data on these guys and that much data on these guys. So I need to reduce my inputs so they level, right? So what the AI does, it judges with this perspective, and that creates bias. And this is also where, unintended results happen, right? That you actually wanted to get rid of. So speaking of an applicable example, maybe, you're a fashion brand and you want to hire someone, right? And then you want to do it, you want to proceed to evaluate the people who applied, right? With your AI that you have trained on your former job applicants, right? But if you only had like 20% women applying and 80% men applying, and then always the man got the job, the AI essentially automatically thinks, oh, sure, they need to be a man, right?
Yeah.
So the weight is not even, it's not balanced, and that creates bias. I think that's important to understand.
And I love that. Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, you go.
No, I just want to say, I love that you bring that up, because that's exactly a post I noticed also from your Instagram channel, which I'd like to share with everyone. A nice quote that you brought, because algorithms have an uncanny ability to reproduce and amplify the biases that we have in society. And that's exactly what you were just talking about.
Yes.
And this is really, for me personally, a really important core topic, because that's the first thing I noticed, which really kept me or held me back from engaging at the beginning, because I was seeing all these images, but they were actually amplifying our legacy society state that we had years ago. I mean, we've made so much progress in last years, and like you just explained so well, it's referring to data from the past. And that's something that I really want to also dive into, how maybe you have some ideas how creators and brands can move against that. Is there any like tools we have in place, or any prompts we can engineer that somehow contradict that and move into the right direction?
Yeah, I don't know if you've realized one thing when looking at these different image generators, but usually AI generative image like image creators based on Stable Diffusion usually don't deliver quite as a good result or postable result as the ones coming from Midjourney, for example, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, right, I think one of the reasons for that is that because I've had this in my own generations on Midjourney, sometimes you get like the stock photo thing, like a part of the stock photo thing. And so they have scraping means like downloading incredible amounts of images or of text data as well from a website. They have scraped a lot of websites that they actually did not have any rights to scrape. So
because it wasn't regulated, right? There weren't any regulations in place.
Exactly. I mean, to be fair, right? They are called stock photo sites because you're supposed to pay for the stock photos. Yeah. So from a human like healthy judgment level, you should be like, well, we cannot scrape this website because this website makes money off of selling these pictures. So common sense should have let them know that this is not a good idea, right? To be very honest. But anyway, they did that point, right? And now we I mean, I don't know if you saw the ruling that they did on someone who produced a Midjourney comic at the beginning of this year, I think February, March. Actually, in the US, it was ruled that this person can claim IP rights to the comic and the story and the images that are inside the comic, because they are not AI generated, I believe. But the cover, which is AI generated, they cannot claim any IP rights, right? And so the idea, I think, is if we're doing a unique creation, we also want to claim IP rights to these unique creations, meaning there's this discrepancy, and this is why I think it's so important to talk about autonomous behavior of us as individuals, right? Instead of always looking outside and being like, oh, this is the regulation, oh, that is a regulation, oh, this is what we're supposed to do. How about just asking yourself if this feels right to do, right?
Exactly.
I think we're in dire need of a shift of our mindsets, where we need to go away from seeing what someone is chewing out for us, but rather be like considerate enough to say like, hey, they scraped millions of pictures from artists who are trying to make a living on these things. Maybe I don't use these images for sale. I can use them for advertisement. I can use them to make, private social media posts or do a blog post, right? But maybe let's not put these images specifically on chain and sell them. That's my personal opinion, obviously. Everyone is entitled to their own. But I think morally, ethically speaking, probably not a good idea. On the other hand, I just saw Maximilian is here with us, right? She's someone who's training her own AI based on stable diffusion, right? So that's an entirely different story, right? Because
let's just blend in a picture while you talk about it. So we got that here as well. I want to
yeah.
celebrate all the creators out there. Let's bring her on. This is amazing.
Yeah, so On Click Closet is one of the 3 winners we had in our collaboration for the ALANA magazine with Fashion AI. And this is her generated design, right? But we're taking this one, for example, a step further. As a partner, 010F, for the ALANA magazine, we're helping to turn these images into 3D garments that can be worn on the app, right? And then it's not the image, right? That is like the true source of something. It is the 3D garment, right? So there's always ways to take this a step further, make it your own. Like even if you were to sketch over it in Photoshop, right? Then you would end up with your own result of this.
That's what actually happens also in the physical world when you're designing. You do collages, you sketch over it, you get ideas, you put it together. So it's actually really a representation of the physical work as a designer as well. You can think that way in the digital world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I think there's all of this, and all of like the things I think we need to adjust within ourselves, right? And be more responsible about how we act, because we live during these exciting times, on the verge of all of this, which is fantastic, I think. But it comes with a lot of responsibility, because we're responsible also as individuals right now to set the standards on how people look at this back in like 20 years and like, oh, they did it this way. You're like, why should we change now, right? So re-establishing standards is super hard. But once you do it, you asked me, how do we encounter bias, for example? So one big problem I see with AI is that it's like the training, how AI is being trained is not very transparent, especially from the biggest companies that are right now working on AI. So just naming OpenAI as an example, right? I think they're doing incredible work from, obviously this, I only know the stuff that they publish. And I have a feeling that their CEO actually has a good moral compass. But I still do think what is lacking is transparency on how they are training ChatGPT. I think to avoid bias, you need transparency, right? If you have that lack, it makes it indefinitely more hard to iron out bias in any way, for example. And so, yeah, I would wish there would be more transparency. I think.
You're saying so many points. Like I don't want to say anything because I don't want to stop you, because every point you're mentioning is so important right now. I just want to highlight that here, because it's like you said, just to go back and summarize a little bit, this transformation, having AI coming into industry is such a accelerated speed that our governments and regulations are not keeping up with it. That's just a fact. I mean, the European Union's just brought out some regulations. They're on a good track. They're definitely setting a good example. And I'm a fan of just let's start anywhere. It doesn't have to be perfect, but they're already doing a good job and taking a step in the right direction. But like you said, we as creators, we as brands need to also think responsible. And we need to, we can't just jump on everything just because it's possible. And I know a lot of organizations and brands do that, but I also want to highlight that these things might be regulated going backwards as well. So as a brand, you could just jump on and say, hey, it's not regulated. I'm just going to take the opportunity and just get access to all this hard work that people put into and just get it for free. But this might turn also on the backside, and a lot of these images that we're creating also have a backlog, and you can trace it back to where it's coming from. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind when we're creating our work in AI. The industries, governments are still behind, but I hope they'll catch up a little sooner than later. And in the meanwhile, we need to sit at the driving wheel. We need to make these decisions and think about how we engage with AI and how we incorporate in our workflows, for sure. So that was a really important point. Thank you so much for highlighting that.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, one thing that I almost forgot, or actually two things, is a lot of us use ChatGPT, I think, as like a replacement for Google. If we are not on a Windows PC and we don't have Bing, then we go on ChatGPT and we're doing research with it. And that's actually a very dangerous thing to do. I just want to bring some awareness to the fact that ChatGPT is, as of my current understanding, not connected with the internet, which means it really has, it bases stuff on old data, but it is not programmed to tell you, oh, sorry, like I actually don't have this information, right? Sometimes it says that, but more like seldomly, and more about like very distinct questions.
Yeah.
But if you're asking something more general, investigative, right? It tells you a lie. It doesn't tell you the truth. It comes up with a generated lie, right? And I think a lot of students also have been running into this trouble where they were like, hey, let's do some homework with ChatGPT. And they run into this trouble that, the answer was not correct because the AI hadn't been trained on something like this, right?
Yeah.
And, we had this in the past, I want to say 5-6 years, the topic of like, oh, this is fake news, right? And we cannot underestimate that if we just plainly believe what an AI tells us, the massive generation of false data might be just a result. So especially for brands or founders, it's as individuals as well, and for example, news articles or little blog entries, right? Make sure to fact check. It's really, really important.
I love that you bring up ChatGPT, because whenever I talk to someone, I also give them the advice, use it. Don't have any company details on it when you use it. You don't want to have the sun coming here. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get rid of the sun somehow, navigate around it. So just to get back, never given company details. You don't know where they're going. Also personal questions that give insights about your personality, your psychology, state of mind. Be really careful with that. Definitely, I'd keep that in mind. Those are two things I always highlight. And like you said, it's a basis. You get the information and it gives you a good framework, and it saves you a lot of time. But use that and then check it and give it the extra detail or the personal touch or your top of it.
Utilize, it's not like ChatGPT is the only good AI research tool out there, right? There's Algovera, I think, it's a really good one. I think the founder of Ocean Protocol, which is a blockchain-based product that analyzes and validates AI data, right? Data sets, to be precise. I think they are part of this program, and it's there is some more transparency about how it's trained, so that's nice. Then there is Perplexity AI, which is connected to a certain degree to the internet and can actually give you references, right? So sometimes if you guys can check this by yourself, okay? Ask ChatGPT to give you 10 different quotes about like a specific topic. And I will promise you, when you fact check, you will run into a lot of trouble finding the actual source of these quotes. Yes. Okay, so it's a very simple test to figure this out for yourself, how much you really want to trust AI to tell you stuff, right? So while these tools are great, and I encourage everyone to start getting on top of these technologies, I also think it's really necessary to say, have a human amount of skepticism, right? It cannot hurt. Oh wow, that's wild. Yeah.
It is wild, right?
Yeah, but I think it's also, I don't know how you see this, Marina. Like, I know I'm asking you a question, but
Sure, go for
I
it.
think it's also a culture thing. What I realized in working with a lot of Americans is that their culture is often, it always has this thing to fake it until you make it claim, right? So rather give an answer that's not super perfect, but at least you showed you can give an answer, right? Whilst German education, at least I think our generation still was educated this way, is like you have to be humble about stuff. Rather say you don't know something before you give a false statement. So,
Exactly.
right?
No, it is a point. If anyone wants to learn about cultural differences, I recommend The Culture Map, which is a really good book. I can send the link underneath.
I was about to bring it up,
Direct,
actually.
indirect communication. That's absolutely true and on spot.
Yeah. No, I love this book. You're absolutely right. It's
Oh, you
one
know
of
it.
the,
Very cool.
yeah, no, it's literally next to my desk.
And this is, by the way, that's it. That's so cool that you have that. By the way, this is I don't have any sponsors on this episode and this show in general. So everything I bring on, every topic I bring up, every company I name is just because I'm really excited about it. And I think it's a really worth sharing with you guys. And this is not planned. So this is really super cool that you have that book as well. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely true.
Even though I'm a digital person, I'm a very much physical reading person.
Oh, but you know what's interesting? I had a conversation just today with someone about it. Even though, like, you probably can relate to this too, I'm guessing. Even though we're in this digital world and always up to speed with tech and technology evolvements coming in, I feel like in the personal level, when you're at home, you want to have the opposite, right? You're aware of all these topics going on. If it's automatically sweeping, how's it called, Hoover, or if it's Alexa, those are all topics that I find exciting. But in my personal life, I keep it out of my space because we know what happens with the data behind it, and we know that again is not regulated. So super interesting that you bring that up and that you have the hard copy book.
What can I say? I agree.
Yeah. Super nice. So yeah, I mean, this is just starting the era of AI, and we're just learning how to incorporate into our workflows in a very sustainable and ethical, correct way. It's having such a huge impact on the industry right now, the poor fashion industry, from Metaverse to AI. Maybe Metaverse is coming back with a new provision from Apple popping up. It's wild right now. But there's one thing sure, we need to take it step for step. We need to educate each other, share our knowledge, and go this path together. And that's why I love what you're doing with the ALANA project. I love what you're doing as a creator in the space. You're bringing everyone along on this journey, and it's so nice to see. And we need more of you guys. Definitely, we need more power on board to figure out how we can navigate this transformation.
I mean, our hope at the ALANA project is that we can make a lot of people very knowledgeable, so they can actually go out and talk about all of these things to other people, like essentially being multiplicators of all of this, right? I think that is really important, that we stop sitting on our knowledge, right? That used to be it used to be an attitude, I want to say, from like 2 generations ago, where it's like, I have this specific knowledge and now I'm sitting on it, right? Because then people are forced to come to me. I think this is another mind shift we need to accept, where the most benefit for ourselves we are getting out of like sharing with others.
Yeah.
And I think not everyone has reached that level yet, and that's totally fair, right? Because it takes time. Like nothing takes more time than committing to internal change for yourself, right? That's like, it's the hardest thing to accomplish as of my current level of experience. But I think it's worth it, right? And in ALANA is an educational project. This is this is our primary goal. So yeah, if you don't mind, I would like to talk about one one other AI issue that
go for it. What else do you have in stock?
Okay, so one other issue that was actually I didn't notice until my token engineering co-host Rohan Mehta made me aware of it. It's called the AI alignment problem, and after I saw this, like everything in my mind changed about how I saw AI, right? Because it suddenly popped. So you mentioned this before, right? Right now, within the governments of this world, we're very slow. We're not very efficient, generally speaking, right?
Yes.
And our like human learning curve is like on a tangent like this. We learn, but we learn in a very stable manner usually, right? AI learns in a bell curve essentially, which goes like this, right? It's an exponential learning curve. This is why it's so fast and we are so slow, right? So this is something to understand. Also, the main difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence lies in the fact that humans, if you Marie, if you read this book, right? Let's use this as an example. It doesn't mean everyone in this room now has your knowledge, right? Because they first have to read this book as well. But artificial intelligence, if connected through something we call the semantic web, one intelligence learns it instantly, the other ones know it too, right? And this is also where part of the danger lies, combined with the AI alignment problem. The AI alignment problem means, and I'm not going to explain the technical way. I'm going to just throw out an example that I think everyone can understand.
Yes, please.
So imagine you have a very simple game, one level, okay, and I saw this actually, so I can reference this for you later as well. So you're driving a speedboat in this level, right? And you're supposed to play this level, gathering as many points in form of coins as you can with your little speedboat, right? So the human way of doing this is going through the entire level with your speedboat and catching as many of those coins on your way as you can.
Yeah.
If you give the same task in a very similar descriptive way to an AI, what actually did happen is something that the makers didn't expect. And this is the AI alignment problem, right? So what happened is the AI just drove with the speedboat around the first curve where there were five coins in a circle, and it kept driving in the circle. It didn't bother to finish the level because it was only tasked with making as many points through coins as it possibly could. So it got stuck in the first curve, just cycling through those coins, right? And this is the problem, right? Right now we cannot really predict if we task an AI with something that the way it tries to achieve the task is actually how we want it to achieve it.
Yeah, so we can't set the parameters because there might be other options that we don't have in mind that might be also a little problematic, right?
Exactly. And this is something I also wanted to bring some awareness to, but I will stop nerding out now. So
no, that's a great explanation, because the more simple the explanations are, the visual, I think, the more people can understand it, because on this session we have people from joining us from all parts of all different levels of technology. And I love that example. Yes, there are so many scenarios and technological frameworks that we can't even imagine yet that maybe AI is going to figure out and develop, and it's going to be outside of our control because we can't set the parameters correctly, right? Yeah. So that's definitely a really good point that you highlighted there, a very, very, very important one as well. But yeah, I think it's like with everything, you can use it for the good, for the bad, but we need to somehow set the boundaries and find ways to set control on it. And that's probably going to be the big challenge. And I think, like we mentioned today in our session, we probably shouldn't depend on governments, because they have a lot of topics and they're quite slow on these topics as well. Yeah. So we really we need all the creators out there. We need all the technologists out there to join in to find solutions, how we can keep these tools under control, how we can get the best out of it and have them set on good purposes and benefiting everyone on their journey. Definitely a good point. Super nice. So I just wanted to say, you guys, if you have any questions, we still have like about 10 minutes. Feel free to add them in the comments. We would love to answer anything you guys have to this session. It's like I said, I just didn't want to say anything because you were in such a good run, hitting one point after the other. And I have still so many topics I'd love to talk about. We definitely have to have you back as well. I feel like this is still such a new field that everyone's getting into, and there's so many questions out there. But I love that you brought up also Stable Fusion as an open source platform for creating visuals for us designers out there. It's a great community platform. I think getting it installed is probably quite a hurdle for people that are not that techie, that are not that involved in platforms like GitHub and everything. But there's also beautiful user interfaces that you can also download and install some models. So for anyone who's not that into coding, definitely reach out to me. I'd love to also send you some links how you can also create more easy interfaces that you can also engage with if you're not that much into coding. So let's see if we have any questions.
Do you see questions? Because I don't. I only see comments or private chat. It's like my options.
Yeah, I think everyone's probably
soaking in them away. Oh, that's so sorry.
By the way, I don't know if you guys have your drinks with you. Following Orla's suggestion for our drink session today, both of us, we have our, I got a mocktail with a little bit of orange in it. I was thinking of making a pink one to honor your iconic pink hair.
Yeah, it looks a little bit faded. I think we're okay.
No, but that's super nice. So I think with that, if we don't have any questions, this was a super nice session.
Oh, I think we do have a question. Many fashion designers.
Let's bring that one in. Right? Yes. So many fashion designers believe much in conventional ways when it comes to designing apparel. How do you align with them with generative AI? Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I can start. Then you can put the finishing touch on it. I think one part is being scared of these new technologies taking over their jobs. Yes. And I think the reason for that is because companies have been setting, and let's remind everyone, I speak for myself, not for World of Match, right? Many companies have been setting very, very poor examples on how to integrate AI into their companies, right? Some companies fired their whole ethics department once AI was put in place. Others fired half of their staff from human resources. There is a huge decline in creative freelance work right now. So all of these things, they are not a joke, right? And these standards are being set by individuals and by companies. And I think this is also where the fear from, or this claim might come from, of like, no, we believe in traditional way of, making fashion. So I think sometimes, behind these phrases, there is a much deeper message. And I think that's something we, should be able to read between the lines, right? Mm-hmm. The other part of this is that AI cannot take over right now any job, really, okay? The reason for that is because we have not enough data to create a very highly dedicated, specific model to do, a very general job very good. So for example, evaluating a human resource, right? So someone to just interview you as an AI, it will only work as a partial help, right? Yep. It doesn't mean that, there should not be a person in place that goes through this whole evaluation with the AI as I call it like a symbiosis or a team experience of sorts, right? And it's the same with fashion design. And I think I proved this quite well when I was, maybe you saw this, Marie. I did this video on my Instagram where I used, an AI generated mid-journey image that, had like a really nice fashion piece.
Yeah.
Did it save me from spending 4 days in front of my computer until like a final animation and rendering? No, it did not, right?
No.
So while the image was generated in seconds, right, that is not fashion design, not digital fashion design, not physical fashion design, right?
And
There's
also, it's just a 2D image at the end of the day.
that's what I mean to say. There is a process to actually getting it to like a useful point, right?
Exactly.
A garment, be it digital or physical, is only useful if it has a state of usefulness. So
Yeah.
a physical garment needs to be able to be worn. A 2D image cannot be worn, right? The same
Absolutely.
goes for the digital garment. And if it cannot be worn in as a game skin, if it cannot be worn as an AR filter,
Or
great,
transferred in
I
the
have
physical
this
world.
image. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have my eyes on 3D AI tools all the time. Hafid and I actually recently tested one again together,
Yeah.
and it's very limited, right? It only allows you to generate items which are very general, lack uniqueness, and let's face it, right? A t-shirt will always be a t-shirt. An haute couture dress will always be something very highly unique.
Yeah.
There are worlds in between this, right? And the
Yeah.
same counts for the digital space.
This is why also luxury is becoming more and more important in the physical world. And the more digital we add to our fashion industry, the more valuable physical, handcrafted garments and art pieces will become. And I love that you also highlighted that, yeah, that it's about the images that are being created. They're not three-dimensional objects. It's like a
Yeah.
design. You can design a lot of things, but maybe they're not producible in some way. You still have to have this knowledge of garment construction, how things work, if you bring into the physical world. And also this is like this new job layer that's coming into industry right now, a prompt engineer, somebody who gives the right prompts also to get the right visuals out there. You're going to have this knowledge. I mean, Paola mentioned this photography knowledge. You need artistic knowledge. You need construction knowledge. And all that comes together to have really good content. And everything else is just going to be a mass of visuals that we definitely are going to be flooded with, which also brings me to one more topic I want to highlight. Because with AI rolling in now, I mean, we already are engaging with AI probably without knowing it on multiple digital channels. A lot of companies have been using this already for a long, long time. And I think one of the big challenges for society is that with this tech rolling in now and being visible, is that we're going to have a huge trust issue in our industry, within one another. Because, I mean, you guys are on LinkedIn. How many messages do you get? And I'm sure that you guys had one or the other question, like, is there actually a human behind this question, this message? And bring this humanity back into the game, knowing what's real and what's not, is a whole new topic that probably we can focus on in a whole episode as well. How we tackle this trust issue that's coming our way in our industry. And but what I love about is that the interpersonal connection, the personal connection to the human being behind, is becoming more and more valuable, more and more important. So this is why we're bringing real humans on the session to you guys, to talk about real topics that humans are generating, and that we as humans are facing with this technology.
Yeah, I think you're right about this. I think there's also a reason why in Web3 communities play such a huge role. While we're working semantic web tokens, all of these very technical things, right, and very digital things. But at the same time, you have this movement of like communities and people banding together because they feel like they share a similar vision. And I think there's always like not a counter movement, because it builds a symbiosis with the whole tech layer.
But it's reactive. movement reacts to something that's happening in society.
Yeah, it's good to see. It's healthy. I think it's very healthy.
So too. Everyone can benefit from real human connections and enhancing that a little bit more after this era of social connection that we had the last decades.
Yeah, but maybe one final claim I want to make is I think if companies or small brands, think about including AI into their workflows, I do think it needs to be encouraged. Hi, Trace, by the way. It needs to be encouraged. It's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, do it consciously, right? Do it very consciously, because otherwise you might end up hurting yourself, hurting others, and this is something to avoid, right? We want to make the world potentially a better place, not a worse one. So even if you're very little, or if you think this is not a huge deal, it probably is. And so, yeah, I think this is what I wanted to say.
That's such a great final phrase for this, because that's what I hope that our conversation was about. I mean, there's a lot of tech conversations out there, how you can get the best benefit out of it, the rest, how you can get your 30% productivity out of AI. But, we forget the humanity, the human part, the ethical and moral part, which is a huge part that should be in the conversation. So thank you so much for diving into this topic.
Also the uniqueness part, right?
Yeah.
Because specifically when you're trying to communicate a brand, for example, every unique, like it has its unique selling proposition, right? Like every endeavor, every company is supposed to have that. And visuals or branding visuals that you put out alongside this should obviously represent this message, right? So it needs to have a certain degree of uniqueness. And as much as I think these tools are so great to test, like Simplified or any of these tools right now, they give you very generic results, right? So actually, as a brand, unless you're trying to train your own AI, you do want to stay away from these things. You can use this if you're a student and you're doing some blogging, right? But if you're truly trying to build a brand, this is not the way to do it, right? Yeah.
All right. Such a great conversation, Stella. I have to say thank you so much for sharing all this with us, for sparking also new thoughts in my head as well. I'm sure everyone can take something away from this. Just a little starter guide to get going with AI and digital fashion. So I think we met our 8 o'clock on the dot. We went through all the questions, so thank you also who shared their comments on the session as well, and to everyone out there who joined. I'm just going to give you a last cheers before the sun blends me completely. Thank you, Orla, for bringing the idea of bringing drinks on our session. We're definitely going to include all our community's ideas, and if you have any other ideas for the session, feel free to share it as well. I'd love to hear them. With that said, I wish you guys a fabulous rest of the week, and I'll see you guys soon.
Bye-bye.